Canada's counter tariffs on steel, aluminum and autos will remain in place, but as of September 1st, tariffs on all the U.S. goods that are CUSMA-compliant will be removed. We've got all angles of this story covered, including reaction from provinces, industry and our party insiders. We begin, though, with the government's case for why it's doing this. Here with me now is Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Karina.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Canada has essentially taken a key component that it saw originally as leverage against the U.S. today, taking it off the table. So what cards does Canada have left in these negotiations?
Canada has a lot of cards, Karina, to use your analogy, in our conversations with the Americans. We're their most important customer in critical industries. We have opportunities where we can invest in projects as Canadians and Americans that will be critical to economic growth in both countries. So we have a lot of resources and a lot of trading opportunities that the Americans are very interested in. As you said in your opening, these counter tariffs were put in February. The Americans subsequently exempted CUSMA-compliant goods. It wasn't on the very first day they announced their tariffs. A couple of days later, I remember a conversation I had with Secretary Lutnick. He told me that they would be announcing that CUSMA-compliant imports into the United States would be exempted from these tariffs. Canada hadn't taken that step, and the United States a few weeks ago, for the first time, publicly in an official presidential executive order, committed to respecting the CUSMA-compliant exemption, which puts Canada, as the Prime Minister said, in the best position of any other country right now in terms of a trading relationship with the United States. It's not where we want to be. It's not where we were 8 months ago, but we still have a significant marginal advantage. And maintaining tariffs that were not respecting the CUSMA exemption that the Americans had put in place some months ago, in our view, was unwise.
Why not increase the sectoral tariffs, though? If, as the Prime Minister said, this is about matching, about being on the same playing field, but we don't have the same level of tariffs on their steel and aluminum and autos as they do have on yours. What was the thinking behind not going forward with that?
The situation with respect to autos is quite similar. It mirrors largely our
okay, but steel and aluminum does not.
Right. And look, the Prime Minister, I think I saw in the news conference, answered the question that because we believe there is an opportunity in the coming weeks to come to a bilateral deal with the United States that will put us in a better position than we're in this evening with respect to those sectors that they've targeted with these sectoral tariffs. The challenge is, Karina, whether it's steel, aluminum, automobiles, or softwood lumber is adjacent to this conversation, but critical for the Canadian economy. These are areas where we're the most integrated of any other country with the United States in the supply chains. And they have, in the trading agreements they've reached with other countries, not provided relief on these sectoral tariffs. So it is a significant challenge for us. But while the Prime Minister, following his conversation with the President and my conversations with Secretary Lutnick, while there is an opportunity, in our view, to work towards a bilateral agreement, we're going to continue to pursue that. And if we get to a different conclusion, the Prime Minister will make the decisions that would be appropriate then.
Now, obviously, critics, even people who are not always critics of the Liberal governments. So, whether we're talking about Unifor's Lana Payne or others, seeing this more as appeasement, elbows down, that this is just giving in. What do you say to those critics who also say that every time we appease Donald Trump and the U.S. administration, as we did with the DST, the digital services tax, that we're just showing that we're willing to go more and more? And especially, how do you if someone's insatiable in terms of what the appeasements they're looking for, when do you draw the line?
Well, these are always the judgment calls, Karina, that the government and obviously in this case the Prime Minister make. But it's not sort of, you have to be careful not to take one slice of time and come to a very rigid conclusion. We are in the best position of any country right now in terms of the overall tariff rate applied to our exports to the United States. The American government committed to that in an executive order. Very, very important to the economic security of our country that CUSMA be respected. The Americans will trigger in the coming weeks, we believe, their domestic process around consultation to get ready for the CUSMA review, which will start in 2026, built into the agreement. We're doing the same thing. And we think it's responsible to get to that conversation around a review of CUSMA, something that I'm in Mexico City next week talking to the Secretary of the Economy, Secretary Ebrard, precisely around how we can work together in the CUSMA review process. So we have to get to that conversation in the most coherent posture possible. And the Prime Minister's decision today very much lines up in that way.
Is today's move really more about CUSMA than working towards a bilateral agreement in the interim? I mean, how much in jeopardy is the government worried CUSMA is in?
But they can both be true at the same time, Karina. Our hope is that we can come to a bilateral arrangement which takes some pressure off the sectoral tariffs, but recognizing that, as I said a second ago, other countries in their trading agreements with the U.S. haven't been successful in the sectoral tariffs. We think that because of the integration, because of their dependency on things like aluminum, because of the integration of the supply chains in automobiles, like we talk to these business leaders and these workers' representatives, the union leaders as well, we are in a different case with respect to other countries in this area. Let's see if we're able to get a bilateral arrangement. But this, so if we are, great. If it's in the interest of the Canadian economy, the Prime Minister will make that decision. If it's not the right deal for Canada, he won't. But along the road, we're also preparing at the same time and in consequence thereof for the CUSMA review conversation. We're going to be consulting Canadian industry. I was on a call with a number of leaders in the steel, aluminum, and automobile sector with Ambassador Hillman today. But we're only going to intensify that work as we get ready for that discussion. It's critical to the Canadian economy that we engage in that conversation in the most prepared and thoughtful way, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Now, I know I only have you for 30 seconds more because I know you have other commitments, so I will ask this question really quickly.
So do you. You got other people on your show too, Karina.
First guest is always a priority. Did the Prime Minister give Canadians a false sense of expectations during the election? Has this turned out to be a lot harder than anyone expected?
I don't think so. The Prime Minister was elected on a mandate to navigate the country's economy through the turbulence that President Trump has imposed on the global trading system. The decisions that the president took in March and in February are different than the ones he took in July in terms of other trading agreements he signed. So the American government has evolved their posture particularly on sectoral tariffs, and has made very little exception, has in fact made no exception for any of their trading partners around the world. So that wasn't the picture that they were presenting to the world in February or March. The situation evolves. The great thing for us is Prime Minister Carney remains unequivocally the best leader with the most experience and the most insight in how Canada can both grow our own economy by building big projects again. That was the other part of our election campaign, but navigating through this turbulence with the Americans in a way that protects Canadian workers and Canadian industry. I'm enormously confident as we look out over the next few weeks and few months in the CUSMA review, and grateful that Mr. Carney has his hand on the tiller.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.